Welcome to Accommodate This, and thank you for joining me. Today, I want to address the elephant in the room. And while I do, I'm going to speak very plainly. Don't worry, nobody complained or anything like that. This is more of a proactive video designed to address potential issues. And maybe I'm overthinking it, or maybe my trauma is showing, but I feel like it may be easy for people to believe after watching some of my content that I'm against neurotypicals in some way. I just want to set the record straight that I'm not against neurotypicals. I'm against ableism. I am autistic and I naturally struggle to communicate in ways that make sense to the majority. But I'm doing my best not to demonize people because my gripe is very much about the system in place that consistently does harm and dehumanizes neurodivergent people. I don't believe in fighting fire with fire, so I'm choosing my words very carefully. And still, it's no secret that our social systems have been established for centuries by the majority. And the majority happens to be mostly neurotypical. But I acknowledge that even neurotypicals are at the mercy of the same system. And honestly, I think most people are doing the best that they can with the level of knowledge that they have. And at the same time, our existing social systems expect neurodivergent people to stretch ourselves beyond the breaking point, always giving and rarely taking. We, the people of the United States, supposedly have liberties to make the most of our lives in pursuit of happiness. At least that's what we're told, and that's what's written in our Constitution. But unfortunately, this has given some of us a false sense of equality, as though we all have the same abilities and resources. Therefore, ignore privileges and disabilities, ignore how the system is rigged for or against some people, because we only have ourselves to blame if we fail. If we're sad, society says it's because we aren't trying hard enough to be happy. If we're poor, it's because we haven't worked hard enough. If we're homeless, it's because we deserve it somehow. And this ideology, though sometimes maybe well intended, it gives us an excuse to shame the oppressed instead of helping them. And it promotes fame and fortune as some pinnacle of human achievement. And that's one of the ways that ableism is permitted to thrive. When you are benefiting from the system, it's easy to say to the less fortunate, well, life isn't fair. But when you are being hurt by that system, it is very reasonable to ask, can we change the system to be less harmful? And if so, why not work toward that? Well, some of us are actively working on that. But we live in a democratic society, which means majority rules. So unfortunately, if we ever hope to change the system to make it more balanced and fair for all, we need the majority to help make those changes. And we need the majority to understand they aren't losing their privileges by allowing more people to benefit in the way that they do. After all, rising tides raise all ships, right? But marginalized people, like those of us who are neurodivergent, are often blamed for our oppression rather than helped out of it. We are treated as though it's our own fault that we are marginalized because we are somehow choosing to be weird or different. We are viewed as normal people trapped in broken bodies and with broken minds who just need to be fixed, as if being neurotypical is somehow a lifestyle choice rather than a brain type. As well intentioned as that might be, it is ableism at its core. And you're probably thinking, well, David, if you just tried harder, or stopped causing friction, or would just go with the flow, you might not have such a hard time. That is ableism. That is ignoring the fact that you benefit from the current system, and that I'm not deserving of respect unless I act more like you. But one tiny detail that you may be overlooking with that statement is that I'm not acting. I'm not acting weird. I am weird. I'm not acting disabled. I am disabled. Expecting me to deny my authenticity and overcome my differences to warrant entrance into some social acceptance is not acceptance. That's not even tolerance. That's blaming the victim, and that is ableism. Now, I agree that we are better off when we work together. I agree that systemic change requires compromise. And I agree that we need to find common ground and build from there. But the idea that anyone pointing out a problem is the source of the problem is a problem. After all, when someone is drowning, they're likely going to kick and scream and splash, but shaming that person for making waves is heartless and dismissive. Nothing says, I have privilege and I don't want to change that, more than when someone takes issue with the drowning person. And that's what I see most of the time when people talk about how autism has affected their neurotypical lives. Social media makes it super easy to find examples of this because it encourages people to share controversial opinions without the same consequences that they'd experience in person. For example, I saw a post on Facebook from a woman who was asking for advice dealing with her sister, who she suspected is autistic. Part of her post explained that she believed her sister was always treating people poorly and always blaming others for her behavior. But did the woman ever try to see things from her sister's perspective? Did the woman ever take a look at herself to see what she may be doing to hurt her sister? Her sister may not be blaming her, but listing her as a cog in the system that results in her own discomfort. Her sister may be trying to ask for an accommodation, but the woman and her family are taking offense instead of actually listening to their sister's concerns. It's kind of like someone saying, "You're hurting me," and then you take issue with how they asked you to stop abusing them. Is that woman really okay with continuing to hurt her sister until she asks correctly, especially when her sister has a condition that hinders her ability to communicate? I've also seen post after post on social media of parents of autistic children who are exhausted and frustrated with their profoundly autistic child. They talk about outbursts and violent tendencies. They rarely ever see these situations as calls for help. They always frame their distressed child as difficult or disturbed. And they'll post videos where they are restraining their children, arguing with them, and refusing to listen to them or address their needs. One video showed a lady holding onto her child's arms in an attempt to make him sit still, and the kid pushed her away. And of course he did. He'd been trying to tell her he does not want to be touched, and all she kept doing is touching him. Many autistics experience discomfort and even pain when touched, and it's perfectly understandable he'd become more and more resistant and irritable the more she continued to hurt him. Another mother was trying to get her son to do chores when he was overstimulated, and when his sister provoked him and teased him for his distress, refusing to stop when he asked, he had a meltdown. He stood up for himself and scratched her. Next thing we know, the mother is chastising him, forcing eye contact and expecting immediate confirmation that he's listening to her. No time to just relax or absorb what happened. There was no sympathy for him. There were no attempts to understand what had happened. The boy nearly broke into tears, asking if he was some sort of demon. He was obviously expressing distress over how things had escalated, but all the mother cared about was controlling his behavior and making him feel bad about his meltdown. Another mother posted a video of her child who looked as though he was ready to jump out of his skin. He would squeeze his hands and rub his arms and legs and kick when he was strapped down in a seatbelt. But the more his distress was ignored, the worse his behaviors became until he was literally punching himself in the face. To me, it was obvious that he needed to feel some deep pressure or to let out some energy at that moment. But instead of addressing his needs, the mother just kept telling him to stop. There were no attempts to understand his behavior, only to curb it. And later she admitted to binding his arms and legs to keep him from hurting himself, which is exactly the opposite of what needed to happen. But instead of attempting to understand his needs, she focused on suppression and conformity. She substituted his attempts to self-soothe with her own version of abuse, and then complained at how hard she had it when he became more irritable and his discomfort continued to escalate. In the neurodivergent community, we say all the time, nothing about us without us. And that's because these forms of ableism happen every day. And they don't have to if you would just communicate with us. And these are real examples of family members denying the autistic person of their needs and attempting to control the autistic person and force them to fit into a system that was never made for them. And while I believe these people wanted the best for their autistic family members, they were going about it in the worst ways possible. The saddest part of all of this is these are people who supposedly love their autistic person in their lives. Imagine how people who don't care about us treat us. I can tell you from experience that it's not pretty. Now, if you feel attacked by any of this, and you are tempted to shut me down by saying things like, you don't know what it's like to raise an autistic child, well, I could say the same to you if you are neurotypical. You don't know what it's like to be autistic. I understand that the people in these examples just want their autistic family members to not struggle so much. But punishing us for our differences and forcing compliance isn't mercy, it's abuse. And that's ableism. The fact is, autistic people are going to suffer as long as our social systems insist on viewing our cries for help as annoying disturbances. We're going to suffer as long as our social systems shame us and punish us for being disabled. We are going to suffer as long as our social systems try to erase our individuality and authenticity, refusing to understand or make the smallest of changes because of the waves that it might cause. The reality is, nobody benefits from the blame game. And I recognize, even after watching this video, there will still be some people that believe I hate neurotypicals. If that sounds like you, prepare yourself for more, because I'm going to continue to point out aspects of the systems in our society that continue to marginalize those of us in the neurodivergent community. If you're offended by that, consider why you feel that way and do better to live in a way that is less likely to align your identity with oppression. Let's stop blaming the victim. Let's stop taking any form of criticism as an attack. Let's stop choosing conformity over compassion, and let's change the system so we can all prosper. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please comment, like, and subscribe to see more content like this, or click on the video here to continue watching.